Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your very serious host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sleeping Saturday. And welcome to Q&A Day. This is an extension of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Why? Because in the whole Bhagavatam is questions and answers by the sages. And now, this is what's going on now. We're asking questions about our spiritual life. We're finding people that are friends, our community. I'm going through this, right? It's a living practice where I'm going through life. I'm hitting a roadblock. I'm running into a wall. What do I do here? Do I go left or right? There's a fork in the road. And these are sort of important things to do. We find a community of practitioners and throw these questions out. And of course, none of these are in stone, but I find in my life, if I have a burning question and I throw it out to the community of Vaishnavas or people who are on a bhakti path, I tend to get a similar answer. It's always slightly nuanced, but a similar answer. And you know what that does, Kaustubha? It helps me get out of my ego, because sometimes my ego has an agenda. Okay. But then there's an agenda that I hear from the bhaktas, and generally they say, Krishna speaks through the Vaishnavas. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
I like it.
Today we're broadcasting on Facebook. So if you're new to this and you're just stumbling upon this on Facebook, you can join us live 8 a.m. On Facebook, or you can go into Zoom. And 5 a.m. we actually do a study of the sacred bhakti literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. And you can get Friday. The codes to get on our Zoom thing through Mara. At wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and she will send you back the secret codes to enter into our fraternity. Fraternity is just boys. Maternity. What's a boy and
sorority
girl?
Is a girl.
Sorority and fraternity. What do you call a co-ed group?
I don't know.
Secret club.
A gang. A club.
A gang. Okay. Our co-ed posse. Okay, let's get on with this. It's Q&A day, so we're going to dive right into this.
Oh, no, but we had a topic to discuss from yesterday's show, remember?
Prostitution?
Let's
not talk about prostitution today. Let's do that Monday. I was just joking when I said I was thinking about prostitution all night. That was a joke. I wasn't thinking about
all right, well, hold on.
We ended our conversation with prostitution yesterday in the class. There's many saintly prostitutes you read about in Vedic literature.
Well, do you want to talk about it or not?
No, I don't want to talk about it, okay. But just leave it at that.
All right.
Saintly prostitutes. Oh. Okay. Kaustubha, I'm going to start with you. We got a question from Joe from California via email. Thank you, my dear. My daughter brought me a Yoda cup. I'm obsessed with Baby Yoda. This is Father Yoda here. I'm obsessed with Baby Yoda. Okay. In relationship to the story of... This is a great question, Kaustubha.
All right.
This can throw people off. I struggle so much with really accepting any spiritual path due to what strikes me as hypocrisy or the randomness of God's will. How dare God be random? Why do good, honest, caring people suffer so much and not really even considering myself in that? There's so many innocent children going through lives of hell in trafficking, child armies. So true. So true. And yet we're supposed to be comforted by God's mercy on a person who actively caused pain and damage and chalk it all up to karma is completely undone by Ajamil's story, right? And Kaustubha can tell that story. In a way, my own struggle seemed worthless if this guy, doing nothing to merit it, receives God's love and mercy just so God can say to others, see, I am merciful. While the rest of us have a struggle just to get through a single day while trying to improve the world that it seems God has left in a mess. This aspect of divine mercy / love seems so far from the world we live in, the rule of karma, so far into this reality that I've struggled really to put faith into the tradition. I understand that it's Kali Yuga. Life will be full of chaos and seemingly removed from the presence of God. I know that it is my hubris in thinking I should be able to see, detect, sense some degree of karma in effect. Certainly my eyes are covered by the illusion, but if God is going to say these are the laws of the universe, this is how you should conduct yourself, and this is the attitude in which to see, then why have a story like Ajamil's that says, well, I'll randomly save this undeserving soul just because? Any guidance on this topic you could give would be so greatly appreciated. I love all the work you guys do and wake up eager to listen each day. Thank you so much for continuing to put this out there. The way you guys are able to connect these passages to everyday life is truly a blessing. So it seems like he does like the show, even though he struggles with the greatest issue, which is why do bad things happen to good people. But I will say,
it seems like he's struggling with why do good things happen to bad people.
Yeah. But you know, this is a good one because this story throws people off a lot.
You want to give it in a super brief?
In brief, there's this person from a very pious religious family who it goes right into prostitution.
You see,
who sees an attractive prostitute, and even though he's from a good family and he's got, and married to a nice lady, he sees this attractive prostitute and gets mentally attached to the point where he leaves his wife, falls madly in love with this prostitute, and like gives up all types of dharma and all types of his spiritual connection,
becomes a criminal, right?
And becomes a criminal, and somebody has a bunch of kids, but on his deathbed, when he's about to die, and he's about to get brought to Yamaraj. Now, Yamaraj is the scorekeeper of your activities, and he administers karma. And so he sent his servants, the Yamadutas, or the servants of Yamaraj, to take the soul and to put him in front of Yamaraj, who gives the karma. But on his deathbed,
and in this case, like severe punishment, right?
Severe punishment, because he was a rascal. But instead of calling out to Lord Vishnu, he calls to his young son, because they say that the son is dear. The youngest one is still affectionate to the father's calling out to that young son, and his son happened to be named.
Hold on. So let's just. He's dying on his deathbed, but as he's dying, his attachment for his youngest son is strong in his mind and his heart. So he calls out to his son.
So he's saying, Narayan, Narayan, come here, Narayan. But because his son was the name of Lord Vishnu, Narayan, the servants of Narayan came, the Vishnu Dutas, the servants of Vishnu, and they said to the servants of Yama, you can't take the soul. And they're like, why not? This guy is practically a criminal for all the things he did. And the servants of Narayan said, well, he called on Narayan's name at the time of death, and therefore we're here to take the soul. And the servants of Yamaraj were like, that's completely unfair. Like, he was actually a jerk in this life, and he should be punished for this. And he wasn't even calling out to Lord Narayan. He's materially attached and was calling out to his son, and therefore he's He's got to deal with all the karma that for all his bad choices in this life. And the Vishnu Dutas said, doesn't matter. He called on Narayan's name. So that seems like a random act of kindness. And a guy like almost like getting like if the president pardons somebody, here's a guy who's an incredible criminal, but the president pardons this person. Oh, but I was friends with you, or you gave a donation to my campaign. I'm going to pardon you. It seems like a pardon from Lord Vishnu. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
Okay. So Joe's, it is a really great question. You know, to me, the heart of the question lies at like, how are we meant to understand the Bhagavatam, right? How do you approach it? This sounds like, you know, there's a message here that just how kind God is, that even though this person wasn't, you know, even though he wasn't even intending to meditate on that name as like a yogi or something like that, and he was living this degraded life. Still, he came and he was saved from that severe hellish punishment. You know, why him, and then why not anyone else? And is this just is there any rhyme or reason to this whole thing? You know, does it make any sense at all?
Right.
And you know, you get different, you know, people in different religious traditions. They speak about, like, you know, they struggle with the sufferings in this world and how things play out. And sometimes people just say, well, you know, like, mysterious are the ways of the Lord, right? Is it that God is so mysterious that we just can't make any sense out of how he acts? And should we just therefore abandon any effort to apply our intelligence to understanding it, and maybe even, like, you know, dangerously become prone to accepting anything as God's will if we do that, right? So, you know, there's that side where, you know, God is mysterious, and you know, we do have to consider that we do have, like, our limitations to understanding God. We have limited perspective, right? We have limited experience. We have limited intelligence. So maybe we don't understand what's going on here. So therefore, in the tradition of bhakti, the idea is it's not going to tell you to abandon your intelligence and just say God's mysterious.
Right.
But the tradition, how the tradition is handed down, is that you approach people that embody that literature, right? If we're trying to understand that literature, we find the people that are embodying the qualities that literature is promoting, you know, wisdom and kindness and, you know, self-control and, you know, inner happiness and so on. Someone that really, like, embodies all that the literature is meant to deliver. We go to that person to help us understand what's trying to be said here. And here's a rule of thumb, you know, that when we're reading Bhagavatam to try to make sense of it, and that is that the narrations in the Bhagavatam are exceptional narrations. They're not typical. They're not meant to be presenting typical events, but they're meant to. That's a great
point.
Right? Yeah, they're highlighting exceptional events to illustrate important points. And so
like the Bhagavad Gita itself, right? You got, like, Arjuna having to fight his guru.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, is the message there that we have to kill our guru? No, this was you know, it was an exceptional, you know, exceptional narrations are shared to illustrate something particular, you know, to try to identify and understand a particular message. And so when we hear that story of Ajamila, we have to try to understand, you know, what is the practical message that I'm meant to take from this? How is this meant to change my life? How is this meant to make me a better yogi? You know, and so that's where we go, and we can take guidance from that. Now, with this, a couple things to consider, but with this Ajamila pastime, the whole thing is set up. The narration is set up in such a way that it provides for us an opportunity to peek into the conversation between the Yamadutas and the Vishnudutas. We get to hear that conversation, right? That's what we're meant to hear, is we're meant to hear that. And then also the Yamadutas go to Yamaraj, and they begin to say, well, what's happening here? You know, we're meant to represent you, and you've laid down the dharma, the laws of karma that are meant to operate. We're meant to carry those out. And it seems like someone's getting a break from the law of karma. Why is that happening? We're meant to hear that conversation and to understand it. And so Prabhupada writes, he wrote, it's in the introduction to that, it's the first chapter of the sixth canto. He says, a discussion ensued between the order carriers of Lord Vishnu, the Vishnu Dutas, and those of Yamaraj and the Yamadutas. And by hearing that discussion, Ajamil was liberated. By hearing that discussion, it wasn't, he heard something and he changed by hearing. That's what happened with Ajamil. He got a break, but his real change of heart came through hearing their conversation. And Prabhupada continued, he said, he could then understand the bad effect of fruitive activities and could also understand how exalted is this process of devotional service. That's what we're meant to understand. We're meant to get some clues into how exalted this process is. Now, if we look at Bhagavatam, the whole first canto is it's a buildup to the conversation that we're ultimately meant to get to, that is carried out throughout the cantos 2 through 12, which is the conversation between Maharaj Pariksit and Shukadeva Goswami. And Maharaj Pariksit asked the question, what is a man, what is someone supposed to do at the time of death, and what should we not do? What should we base our life around, really?
Mm.
And 11 verses in, Shukadeva Goswami answers. He says, O king, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all. Right? That name is so potent that if one can bring their mind to it and meditate on it, it will transform one's mind and will transform one's heart. He says it's the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from material desires, those who are desirous of material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. So you may be like a great yogi, a great transcendentalist, or you may be someone like a Jamil that's like just live this really degraded life. This is the method that's recommended, right? And then if you go to the very last verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, you're going to find more or less the same messages there. The last verse, Canto 12, Chapter 13, Text 23, is Sutta Goswami just wrapping everything up. And he says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Hari, the congregational chanting of whose holy names destroys all bad karma, and the offering of obeisances unto whom relieves all material suffering.
Did you just tell us the end of the Bhagavatam? Did you just read us
Sorry,
the last verse? Spoiler alert here. That's like saying, and then the villain died, and
well, it was the same at the beginning too. It was there in the beginning and it's there at the end. So that's my point. From beginning to end, this is the message of Bhagavatam. That, by hearing these pastimes and by chanting these names, meditating, bringing our mind to this higher spiritual energy, it doesn't matter how bad we've been, how dented we are, it's there. So Ajamil is like us. He's a guy that's struggling with his lower nature, and suffering because of it. And so the Bhagavatam is saying, you may be like that. You may not be a great yogi. You may be struggling with your lower nature. You may be suffering, but we're telling you that if you meditate on these names, if you live a lifestyle that's going to help you do that. But if you meditate on these names, it'll deliver you from all your suffering. It'll deliver the highest, your true nature, the Atma Supersiddhiti. And so there's a promise there, if the Bhagavatam is saying is that if you take up this path, then God will respond. And you say, well, do you have an example of that? Yeah, I'll give you an extreme example of that, right? Not an ordinary example. I'll give you an extreme example of that, and that's a Jamil, right? So yeah. So we just have to try to understand it like that. It's not. I get it. I get it. How you can say that just seems so. Try to go deeper into it and try to really understand what happened. We're given an example of someone who really screwed up their life, right? And by hearing the right conversation, becoming inspired by it, he was able to change and get control of it. But he got a break. He did get a break. And that break, that the auspiciousness of his life came in associating himself with the names of God. So try to understand it like that, and hopefully that it won't just seem so random, but a very special thing is highlighted. A very special narration is highlighted for us to try to get this message. That's all.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I like that, actually.
All right.
There are a lot of very extreme situations. You think of Grandfather Bijma and the vows he took, and they were almost like, come on, do you have to really keep that vow?
Right.
They need another heir to the throne. There was times when he keep vow that if you read it, you say, like, this sounds very impractical, but he wanted to stress the importance of vows and commitments. So yeah, I'd like that. I'm gonna meditate on that. Although there are these sort of magical get out of jail free cards thing in the Vedas, you know what I mean? Like worship Tulsi. Like Tulsi's very ordinary in the sense, like she appears like an ordinary plant.
Yeah.
So there are these like get out of jail cards.
But there's a meaning to that, because Tulsi, the worship of Tulsi is so directly related to our inner nature, right? To respect and love one who's so dear to God. So it's not random.
I get it. I think we should tease this out even on another show, maybe during this week.
Okay.
Because I think it's a cool concept.
Yeah.
These Krishna conscious get out of jail free cards.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
You ready for a question?
What you got?
I got something from Kevin Shanahan via the Zoom chat.
Regular Zoomer.
It's a quick question, this one.
All right.
How do you train yourself not to get offended? I struggle with this, but don't know how to correct it. How do you do that, Raghu?
That's it, huh?
Yeah, that's all.
How do you train yourself? First of all, you start to recognize. That's a great question. It's an important question. Matter of fact, 2 people that wrote me this week were offended by something I didn't even mean not to. I didn't get back to 2 people. It's my fault. I didn't get back to them, and just like a little overwhelmed with messages. Or sometimes you ever like see an email or like, oh, that's an important email, and then you don't check your email, and it gets pushed down to thousands of other emails. And it's not because you hate that person, or that person's bad, or that person's evil, or that person's not important, right? It's just because you got 1,000 things on your mind, and you got kids, and you got your career, and you got your spouse, and you got your, the weather, and you got your own, pleasures in life, and it gets pushed down. So a person, due to some other thing, besides me being like malicious to them, they take something on and they add extra meaning to you not replying to them. They add an extra meaning. You know what the meaning was? There was no meaning. It's just like I forgot, because there was 10 other people who also asked questions ahead of you, but because there was no reply, and we have this filter that came from parents or something that happened to us, and it could have been in a previous life that I was hurt, I was abandoned, people leave, people that I trust have left me, and therefore I can't trust people, and therefore when someone doesn't reply to my email, I go right to, I'm unworthy, this person's a jerk, this person's gonna leave me, like whatever it is, they add extra meaning to something. So the first thing is to recognize is, what filters am I carrying on, or am I wearing? And I start to notice, like, when I get resentful, like that jerk, a red flag should go up. In the same way, I use the example of, like, my wife's car. When I back up, it's got those sensors when you're going to hit a fire hydrant. It goes dee 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 dee, or the steering wheel shakes. We need that in our consciousness, that as soon as I feel a resentment, that's my problem. And that's taking me off my spiritual path. And if we really care about our spiritual path, as soon as a resentment's there, catch it and notice it. This is how an alcoholic gets rid of alcoholism, is they start to notice, man, I'm an alcoholic. So I think his question is very, sanguine. It's an important thing to notice. How do you start? You start by noticing, I get resentful a lot. So that becomes his problem. It's not their problem, right? It's not my problem that I didn't return someone's email. I can say, I'm sorry, I was oblivious. Forgive me, I didn't mean anything but it's got nothing to do. It's the person who's getting resentful's problem. They'd have to deal with it. And sometimes people are actually crude. Like, I didn't want to write that guy back because he is a jerk. Or I just write back and say, your question's worthless. Why are you wasting my time? I could have written back like that. They still will suffer with resentment. And this is a massive part of our Bhakti yoga practice, is don't let the petty things catch us up in this world. And we were talking about that on the show yesterday. We were saying, when people act very petty and they act all stinky like a skunk, why are you trying to kill the skunk? You trying to strangle the skunk because he squirted on you? He squirted his stink potion on you? Don't try to kill the skunk. You kill the skunk, you get your hands smelly. That's what happens if you kill a skunk. So if people are being rude and cruel and obtuse, well, you want to try to go after them? This isn't junior high school, people. We got to act bigger than that. We're trying to become transcendentalists. If I'm on a spiritual journey, I got to be above these small things. And whether I'm adding extra meaning or whether the person is pretty obtuse, it's doing me no good to carry resentment around. It's just doing me no good. And if I'm really one of these persons that has been hurt, where I feel like my theory that I run through my mind is that people are untrustworthy or I'm not worth anything, you got to really look into yourself and you say, you know what? This theory is not serving me any longer, and I got to let go of that theory. So I think it's a practice like anything else, like typing, like, snowboarding or skiing, like photography, like violin. It's a practice. It's a practice. It's a practice. And I still practice it. As soon as I get hurt, I practice letting it go quickly, immediately and completely. Immediately and completely. That's the magic couple there.
Thank you for that, Raghu. It was reminding me of sometimes, and you talk a lot about like how sometimes when you're dealing with Radha Swami and he'll kind of ignore you. Like if you're, if you start to talk, not just you and me or anybody, if you start to bring up something and he's sensing that like your attitude towards this isn't helpful, he just kind of, he doesn't, verbally correct you, but you could just see he just stops listening to you.
Yeah, he just drifts off into space. And
and I've had times where I've been with him and discussing something and discussing, different people doing different things. And then I get to a point I say, well, and then someone did that, it's really kind of hurtful that they would do, or I would say something like that, and I could just see he would immediately change the subject, just like he wasn't ready to entertain my, my self-pity for a second.
No, he definitely steers the conversation to truth and gets you right out of that beep, beep, beep zone.
Yeah. Like I'm here, like I need you to join in on my pity party.
Commiserate with me, Maharaj.
If I can get Radha Swami to validate my self-pity, I'll feel really good. And just like, not only did he steer it different, like abruptly, just like abruptly, like, well, anyway, boom, it's just like, okay, there's a message there,
It's psychic surgery. And, it's psychic surgery, the cutting out the ego and the victimhood that we carry around with us. It's what it is. Who wants to live in that victimhood? I'm always right. It's like, come on, people. Okay, I got a question for you.
All right. What is it? Where's it coming from?
This is from an anonymous daily Zoomer. Which one is it? Now I'm going to look at every person. It must be from them. It must be from, I bet it was from that freaking dog that's always sleeping during my class.
Bhakti-yoga dog?
Bhakti-yoga dogs. Oh, look, the dog looked up. As soon as I said that, the dog looked up. This wisdom of the sages family has been so wonderful, and there are not enough words in any language to express my gratitude. We are spiritual beings living in a material world. We are meant to contribute to the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit heavy-hearted and slightly jealous in thinking that Arjuna was so fortunate in knowing his position as a warrior. Maybe I'm wrong. Does good character count as a contribution? People often mention their jobs and their seva and things in regards to their contribution. Right now, I have not worked in almost a year, and I recently learned that most likely will not be returning to work for another year. First of all, I want to say I'm so sorry for this. This is ridiculous and so sad. Not that my job makes me who I am. I totally get that. But it was a service job and it was wonderful. And I'm not out. I'm not out and about much to do the seva I had been doing because I don't live alone. And there are people I live with who are uncomfortable with me going and coming now since COVID is a thing. I just don't know what my next move is.
Mhm.
I've been praying on it. But, Krishna has his own timing on things. I feel very foggy on this idea of my personal contribution. Thoughts, please?
Okay.
This Wisdom of the Sages family has been wonderful, and there are not enough words in any language. Oh, I guess he said that already. Okay.
So, thank you
Good
for this
question.
question, Anonymous Zoomer. I get the impression that there's a couple things at play in this question. One is the feeling of the need to make a contribution as a good person, as a good yogi, right? It means that I should be contributing, doesn't it? So, I'm eager to do that. I want to contribute. I had this job that I felt like I was contributing, and now that due to circumstance, that job's been taken away from me for a lengthy period of time, and I'm feeling a little lost, right?
Yeah.
And then another part of it has to do with, it seems like I'm not really contributing much. How about my character? If I'm working on my character, is that making a contribution? So it's a I appreciate anyone that's thinking this deep about life, and not just whining or complaining, but like trying to really understand how can I be of most service in life. I think it means it's a person that's catching on to what human life is meant for. So there is, first of all, there's no material circumstance, there's no material situation that can prevent someone from engaging in bhakti, from engaging in devotional service, right? It doesn't matter, right? And there's a really fascinating, interesting, and beautiful part about understanding bhakti that that helps clarify this, and that is that it's the offering of one's will to serve that's accepted, and not so much the result of the service, right?
Right.
Because we can't control the service, devotional service, bhakti. The service itself, serving is our nature, and serving is our offering. But the results of that service is something that we have no control over. The choice to serve is something that we have complete control over. But the results of our efforts is we can only put in the effort. And after that, the results are really not up to us. And that's something that Krishna tells Arjuna on the battlefield, right? He's saying, you're meant to perform your duty, but don't be attached to the results, and don't be attached to not doing your duty, right? So when we had Matthew Dasty, Professor Dasty, on speaking about karma yoga, I think that was episode 332. He said, there's a quote from him and we posted this on our Instagram. It said, "For karma yogis, outcomes we have no control over should have zero influence on our sense of the quality of our lives." Right.
Say that again.
Okay. For karma yogis,
Karma yogis.
and that includes bhakti yogis who are active in society,
Right.
outcomes we have no control over should have zero influence on our sense of the quality of our lives, right? So you lost your job, because of, I assume, because of COVID, and that's something that you can't control. But the will to serve is something that you can control. Now, will the results of that manifest in a big way or a little way? Will they will it be something that changes the world, or something that seems like it was just like a drop in the ocean? That we can't control. We can try, we can put in the effort, but we can't control. But we're satisfied simply to serve, and it's that decision, that will, that surrendering of one's will to serve, that is accepted, and not so much the result. And we see that play out. There's important passages. Like, take from Ramayana, there are two passages that I think are very relevant to this. Raghu?
The ant.
Ant. Now it's switching around. I mean, sometimes it's squirrel and sometimes it's spider, but I've never heard it ant,
Oh,
right?
I thought it was an ant.
Yeah. Well, ant would work too, but I've heard squirrel and I've heard spider, and there's another one too who I'm thinking. You
You
know
know
who I'm
what?
thinking?
You keep talking. I've got an emergency. My computer's about to die, and I
Oh
have
no.
to go.
Okay. Go. Okay. Go.
You keep talking, sir.
All right. So there's two examples that are, I think, relevant from the Ramayana, the story of Lord Ram, and that's Raghunath was mentioning this. Sometimes he said ant, sometimes he said spider or squirrel. But when the when Ram finally, it was Hanuman had gone to Lanka and see that Sita's there, captured by Ravana. So now the question was, Ram and all the monkey soldiers had to get over to Lanka from India, and so they're going to build this bridge by throwing these stones in. And these monkeys, they were super powerful, and they're throwing big, huge boulders and mountains and everything. And Hanuman's like the most powerful of all these monkeys. And there was one spider or ant or squirrel or whatever that was like, it was just they say it was just moving little grains, just like,
Little tiny
yeah,
grains.
almost
Like,
nothing.
what good is that work? It's like
Yeah,
that's not going to build a bridge.
yeah. And Hanuman was like, "Hey, get out of my way because I, I've got more to contribute than you. I can
Yeah.
pick up a boulder and you're slowing me down." But Ram, he spoke to Hanuman and he made a point. I mean, strategically, he was right. Strategically, it's like probably this is going to go faster if the squirrel just gets out of the way or the spider just gets out of the way. But what really touches the heart of God is the desire to serve, the effort to serve, the love, ultimately the love with which the service is being done. So Ram said to Hanuman, Hanuman, you are giving your all, but this spider is also giving his all. So you're giving equally here, right? He sees both offerings as the same because they're given with the whole heart. And it didn't matter that one person's moving a grain and one person's moving like massive,
Mm.
massive boulders. Right? So that I think that's interesting. That's important because in this world where we are where the information technology is just off the charts, it does. If we were just growing up on a farm and we only knew 30 people in the world, and and we didn't have all these images of other people to compare ourselves to, we wouldn't be
That's what it is,
struggling.
right?
Right? Yeah, we wouldn't be struggling so much with anxiety. Am I worthy? Am I good? Am I just a loser? Am I, and I think that plays out in all of us in some way. Is my contribution enough? You know, but again, we can't control the results. We just can make the effort, and the effort itself is perfect.
It's got nothing to do with what anybody else is contributing. It's
Yeah.
where our heart is and what we contribute.
Right.
There's no metric. Like God's not saying, "Oh, he's got like 40,000 followers. Okay, give him a little bit more bhakti points. You're going straight back to Godhead."
I was thinking of another. This is another story from my experience with Radhanath Swami. Is that at the Bhakti Center, the Bhakti Center. We went with years of just trying to get that place off the ground. Just trying to get our own act together.
Yeah.
And make something happen there. And I remember like years were passing, and I was having a conversation. I said, Maharaj, at this time I was working on this, and now that's completely gone. Like there's no remnant of all that time and effort we put in. We were trying to work on the restaurant, and now that all the effort that we put into it is like all been erased,
Mm.
and now something else is being done. And I just went down a list of like where I was putting in time and energy, and then
Right.
there was nothing left to show for it. And he said, "That's okay." He said, on one hand, you're learning at every step. As we go through this, we learn at every step. But he also just said, the important thing is that we're just putting in the effort. It's ultimately, we're trying to please Krishna, by serving with love, and that's all we can do. So just continue, just continue to try to serve.
Krishna saw that effort, even if it didn't amount to anything.
Right.
We expect that everything should build. I mean, everything could completely burn down. We use that example of like you got this beautiful organic garden, and you do it with love, and you do it with bhakti, and you're growing things, and you're using the vegetables to offer and the flowers to offer, and then all of a sudden, like they frack right on your property, and it's like
Man.
no matter how organic I am,
Yeah.
it's going to completely screw up my water table now, and affect my organic garden. And there still is no loss because your bhakti is accepted.
Right.
All we can do is try our best and leave the results. That's
Right.
the loud message of the Gita.
It is. You're right. And then one last thing I want to share, and that this mention of character. If I'm working on my character, is that service? Is that a contribution? And I would say 100% yes. You know,
Mm.
100%. That really, again, that's kind of the only thing that we can really approach. You know, the what we need to conquer in life is not like huge accomplishments or enemies, but we really need to conquer our lower nature. By conquering our lower nature, we get a heart that's capable of pleasing God. And that's really our only business. So, yes, like working on one's character, through meditation, through contemplation, through reflection, through action, all of these things, that's essential to bhakti. And not only that, but to be able to step back and look at one's patterns in life and see that the part of, like you've been talking about, the part of any hero's journey, it's always there'll always be a point of reflection, right? Of struggle, of reflection, and then of elevating one's character, purifying one's character.
Right.
We're all meant to do it. And if you look at Srila Prabhupada's life, if you looked at his life all the way up until he was about 70 years old, there's no great history there. I'm sure knowing him as a person, he was making great contributions, in smaller ways in people's lives. But it was only when he so much of his life in struggle, because he was trying to start different organizations, and he was trying to start newspapers, and they all just fell apart.
Just failed. Apparently failed.
He looked like a failure. Yeah, you could have framed that as failure, but it wasn't failure. It was pure devotional service. It was accepted, and only much later did any real concrete results manifest.
Mm.
So we can take heart in all these things, I think.
It is that like desire that to be the, because culture pushes, you got to do more. You can contribute more. You can create a bigger audience and a bigger platform, and you need to step into bigger shoes. And it sort of like drives culture and pushes us, work for your full potential. And maybe your potential is just to do less, but more quality, also.
Yeah. I may have shared this before too, but like my wife, she used to be a Montessori teacher.
Yeah.
And she was loved at that place. I mean, just based on her character, everyone could recognize she was someone special. She didn't preach to anyone or anything like that, but people could really feel that she was special. Yeah. And every year, you would sit down with one of the managers, and they would do a write-up on, like, kind of like an analysis of how you're doing your job,
Right.
And they had their system of criteria of how they rate it. And the person sat with her and said, everything you're doing is great, and there's only one category here that is where we really gave you demerits for, and that is more, I don't know how it was phrased, but it was like, you're not trying to basically climb the ladder, right? Like, you're not trying to become the next leader of this or that, and ultimately joining the higher administrative staff and all of that. Like, in their mind, that was the picture of someone making a good contribution, and you're climbing higher and higher up the ladder. But she was like, well, I'm just happy doing what I'm doing, is working on the level that I'm working on.
Right.
So we get caught up in this climbing these ladders, and it doesn't have to be that way. All right.
All right.
You ready?
All right.
Okay. So I got a question for you. Oh, one of my favorite people.
Sure.
Lisa B.
All right. Should I do anything special? Because I just saw Mara yawn. Do I have to put on like a song and dance here?
No, you do not. You just have to carefully listen to Lisa Bermudez's question and answer.
I just want everybody to know who's on camera. I'm watching you. I'm watching you all, and I'll call you out.
All right. This is from Lisa Bermudez, our American adventurer. came via email,
Yes.
right? She jumps out of airplanes.
We have Chris Shungi, who's our Finnish adventurer, and we have Lisa Bermudez, our American Bhakti adventurer.
Okay.
Let's go.
She says, one of the things I try to do each day is to wake up and face the day in the mood of trying to make the world around me a bit brighter.
She does. She does. She has that.
Kind of like that
She
Mary
makes
Tyler
my
Moore
life
thing,
brighter every time.
right?
She is like Mary Tyler Moore. We've dated ourselves. Nobody knows who Mary Tyler Moore is.
She can turn the world on with her smile.
Who can take a nothing date and suddenly make it all seem worthwhile?
All right.
Great song.
I literally ask that my abilities can somehow be a way to elevate the people around me. This is how my day starts.
Yeah.
I have a schedule that I usually follow, and I go to bed the night before mentally prepping for the next day.
She's
However,
good. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So far, so good, Lisa.
So far, so good. However, over the last 2 years or so, I've noticed myself getting frustrated, annoyed, angry, and even a little resentful. Whenever I'm asked to switch up my schedule or a schedule I have with someone else. This is like a yoga teacher thing, probably, right?
Yeah.
I feel
Can you
like
sub for me today? Yoga teachers are like, ugh.
I feel like the biggest brat because I realize that I'm asking to be of help. That I'm asking to be of help in any way, but then when the opportunity comes up, I resent it. I feel like the biggest brat because I realize that I'm asking to be of help in any way I can at the start of my day, but only if it's within my own boundaries, under my own terms. How gross is that? I'm 100% that person who will work extra hours without extra compensation because I love the company I work for. I'm that person who will stay up late with a crying friend, even when I have to get up at the crack of dawn. I will grumble about it, but I'll reschedule a day off that I had planned with family or friends because someone at work needs help. There was certainly a point in my life when I did this too often and felt that I was being taken advantage of. So I set big boundaries that maybe dragged my heart into this little conundrum that I'm in now. My question, here it is, Raghu, you ready?
Hit me.
My question is, how do you enter your day in the mood of service and maintain that? How do you keep coming back to the place of trusting that what you're doing, showing up for, is beneficial to the bigger picture and that it's not going to ultimately drain you at the end of the day? Thanks for all that you do and for all your inspirations. You both and the show are so appreciated. Thank you, Lisa.
All right. I think we have to like reframe service.
Okay.
And the most easiest analogy is if I'm not taking care of myself physically, spiritually, with my diet, what kind of love am I going to give my kids?
You're talking about
Like,
self-care.
here's dad.
Here.
He's dad. Here's dad. He's setting a bad example in so many things. How can I even give love? So there has to be a type of personal integrity that comes in bhakti. That's not necessarily getting a mani and a pedi every 4 days. It means, what was that look? Okay. It
Me?
means,
Oh, Mara?
no, not you.
Okay.
I got my eye out. It means that there's some personal integrity with my spiritual life. If I do the dishes and I'm like, man, I told my kids to do the dishes. Why do I always get stuck to do the dishes? I get no benefit for that effort if I'm doing it with bitterness. We get no benefit for our effort if I'm doing it with resentment. That's the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, work in the mode of passion and ignorance. Whenever do your work, but we do it with devotion. And you could do it in any situation. It could be a most miserable situation done with devotion. Once you have that resentment, you either got to figure out, I got to either let go of this resentment or I got to let go of the work. And you have to be very, very clear in your own mind why I'm doing this.
That's a good formula. Say that again.
I don't know if I can. God spoke through me.
So in other words,
God, what did you say again? Do it again, please, God.
There's two choices. Either
I
you
got to
give
either
up
let
the
go of the work.
resentment,
Yeah.
let go of the resentment, or let go of the work. But there's no point in working in resentment.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
you get no benefit working with resentment.
Right.
So you got to be very clear. And you are actually a great example of that, because
Oh,
you
come
do
on.
your work, and you go back in, you retreat, and you do your work, and you go back and retreat. When you were staying here the last time when we had that event and Rachel and Jeff's wedding, you were really disciplined in going out, doing your thing, being public, teaching, doing your thing, and then going back and retreating.
Just
And
because
I'm
it was
like
so
running
cold
around
outside.
I was running around like a
I was sitting
psycho.
around the heater.
But I think it's important. You have to know what you're supposed to give. And there will be some times where you're going to have to really stretch. And that's understandable. But if you just get always pulled left and right, and it's calling to some like bitterness in the heart, then you've gone off track.
So in other words, you're saying, I think you gave a really good formula: let go of the resentment or let go of the work. In other words, if it actually makes sense to let go of this work, if you can really justify it, if you're not just letting go of the work because you don't want to work, then that's one thing. But if you're going to do the work, let go of the resentment,
Right.
To me, that was a good formula, Raghu.
That's a pretty good formula.
Yeah.
All right. We got time for one more?
All right. I don't know, do we?
I don't know. Yeah, we have 4 minutes.
And this is, I want to spend a little time with this. Maybe go a few minutes over then.
Is this
All right.
this is Bailey's?
I don't know. The one that had to do with.
I was wondering about shifting through the
Russ's-
different rasa relationships.
yeah.
Ooh. Mm.
Should we save it for next week or should we do it now?
Well, if you're going to spend time with it,
Let's save it. Let's
save it.
Yeah, let's save it.
Okay. All right. Well, that means, what does that mean?
It means
I
we got
mean,
4
the
minutes
end
to
of the
talk
show,
about
and I got to get rid of
prostitution.
my Chicago. Okay. Hold on a second. Say something interesting. Any announcements?
Announcements, Vera?
We have Madi's Q&A session tomorrow at 6 p.m. And did we announce our guest for tomorrow?
Guess for
Is that been
tomorrow.
announced?
Ooh, we got a special guest tomorrow. Guess who it is?
I know who it is, so I don't have to guess.
No, you don't have to guess. Okay. It's Gauravani. Gauravani's our guest tomorrow, and we're excited to talk about him.
Love him.
Talk about him. Yeah.
Talk about him. Talk to him.
Thanks, everybody. Gauravani, great kirtan master, great friend of ours. He was like one of our very first guests on the show when we started, and that was like a year ago. So we're bringing him back, and we love this guy. Born into a Krishna conscious family, basically leading kirtan since he was a baby, like literally like 6 months old. He was leading kirtans.
Are you sure?
They just put him in the temple room. They just spin him around and say, "So start singing," and huge amounts of people dance around that baby.
We got a Bhakti recovery group at 9:30 coming up.
Yes.
Patreon members.
Thanks everybody for joining us on Facebook. Join us on a regular basis. If there's something that stuck out to you, stuck in the forefront of your mind, some little piece of knowledge dropped on you, write it down. Take a snapshot on your phone, post it, and tag us. And then we'll repost it and tag you. And we just spread this message. We got to make this type of stuff get viral. People need some spiritual life in their life. You can't just, life without spiritual life becomes a little dry, a little boring. And if you like what we're doing and you want to share about your story, if you're out there, if you're one of the others out there that we don't know is here, go on to Apple Podcasts and write a review and tell us your story. We love to read those. I read them all. Also, if you listen to this on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Matter of fact, everybody here can subscribe to the channel, write some comments. That's how it sort of changes the rankings in YouTube. Yeah, that's what we're working right now.
That whole science, Trevor. Huh?
Pleasure to spend my Saturday morning with you guys.